Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel where I make coding simple for everyone. Today we are diving into the world of React to explore a super handy feature called the useContext hook. If you ever felt overwhelmed by passing props down a long chain of components, then you love what useContext can do for you. So let's break it down together. What is useContext hook? In React, usually data flows down from the parent to the child through properties, right? So we keep passing down the chain. Now, which can get really messy if you have a very deeply nested component structure. So in our example here, we have a parent component, okay, where we have a language state and we also have a function that can help us to switch, okay? And what we are doing, we want to access the current language from a third level child component. So what we end up doing is we pass both the state and also the function which toggle for us the language through a component, a child one, through another child one. So in our example, we are passing language and also the toggle function to a middle component. Then the middle component, it's not using those properties at all. All what it is doing is passing them more down the chain to another component. And if we go to another component, it's doing again the same thing. It's not using those properties. Or what it is doing again is just passing it more down the chain to another grandchild component. Then when we go to the footer component, that's where it's actually used. And that's where we can access the language and we display it to customers. And that's also where we're using the toggle functionality so we can toggle the language from the footer components. So you see what we are doing here. Or what we are doing is we are prop drilling the properties through our life cycles of the components. And that can really get messy in real-time application. And also it can create a lot of issues in your performance of your components and of your application. That's when useContext solves the issue for us. Now let's together refactor this example using useContext. This will simplify the component tree and eliminate unnecessary re-enders in the middle components which are not using these properties at all. Now let's get started. So the context API is divided in two steps. The first step is to create your context, okay? It's like a box you're creating, okay? So first you have to create it, then you make it available to the child components to use it later, to store in it or manipulate it or access the information inside that box. So first thing is to create your box. So we create context, okay? So we import that from React. I'll come down here and that is not a hook, okay? So I can do this, export const, okay? I'll have a name for my new box or my new store or my new context. I'll call it language context equal create context. So up to now all what I have done is just create it. Now I have to provide it and make it available to my child component. So how we do that? Very easy, very simple. All what I do is to wrap up these child components with another one and we call it same language context which we created up, then dot provider, okay? Basically it's providing this context to my child components. Then I'll just place all my child components here. Now what will happen is all the children, even the nested children like the another component, the footer, because they are child of the middle components, they will all of them have access to this new language context provider. Now the language context of provider accepts one property, okay, and it is not optional, you have to pass it, okay? Otherwise why we are using it then? So in this value you can give it anything you want, any values you want the children component to access it, any functions they need to access, all of them you can pass them here. So because I know in my footer I want to access two things, not only one thing, I want to access the language and also the toggle function. So what I will do here, I'll create an object which have language, okay, and also have toggle language. So I'm accessing this and I'm accessing also the function here itself. Okay, now let's do cleanup time. So these are not needed. We don't need to pass down those in the props. Same as here, it's not needed anymore. We just have to remove them because this component is not using them at all. Then again, same, another component. We can just go and clean it up and also clean up this. We don't need to pass it down. Then we go to the footer where we really need to use these properties, but we are not taking them from the props itself now. We are going to access them through our context API. How we can do that then? So you remember when I said the context API have two parts, one is creating it, then another one is accessing it. Now we will be accessing that context API. So the way we can do that is there is something in React which is a React hook called useContext. useContext. And useContext will help us to access our language context. And one more thing is that we need to also import the language context. So I'll copy that, I'll come here, I'll say import from, and whatever folder you have that. App, oh, I have to go down, app, page. Now we go inside our functional component, okay, and we try to access the values and the function we need to. So I'll just go back to my page. That's what I named them. What I will just copy this as it is. Copy, paste it. Then we call our hook useContext because that's the one I'm saying I want to use a context. Then what is the name of the context, or what is the context you want to use, which is for us language context. So this is what we'll do to give us always the latest language and also make this function available for us. Now I'll come here, I'll just paste the function right here and let's save. Now let's go and see if this is working. So switch to French. If I do that, I click it, I should see French here. Okay, there we go. And this one also is changed to switch to English. Now let's try with the button from the footer. Click and you can see now switch to French there, and our current language is English. Okay, so I hope this makes sense and help you to understand really what this useContext is doing. Okay, you can see useContext makes our code much cleaner and easier to maintain, and also improve the performance by avoiding unnecessary re-renders of components that does not need to access those properties. This is very especially useful in larger applications where pros may need to travel through many layers. That's all for today. If you found this explanation very helpful, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more tutorials, and drop your questions or what you'd like to see next in the comments section below, and happy coding!